Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. Most of us lead safe, comfortable lives. As children, we were never beaten up for walking into the wrong neighborhood, nor have we been involved with drugs, street gangs, or prison. Our guest today has experienced all of that and more. Today in the studio, we welcome José Chacha Jimenez. José is an American who was born in Puerto Rico and grew up in the projects of Chicago. He is a founding member of the Young Lords of Lincoln Park, a civil rights activist, and at the age of 66, a master's degree student at Grand Valley State University. Chacha, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell us about the ethnic makeup of the neighborhood that you grew up in Chicago.
Well, we had, there were Italians, Polish, German people, Mexicans, and of course a large African Americans, and a large section was Puerto Rican at that time. In fact, they were the first Puerto Rican immigrants to Chicago. Even though we're citizens, we in the Great Migration, we came over in the 50s.
And that's something that people often confuse. They think, oh, Puerto Ricans are immigrants, and in fact, no, you're just coming to the mainland from a territory which is already the United States.
That is correct.
Sure.
Yes,
sure.
We were citizens 1917 during the First World War. So we've been involved in all the actions, all the wars that the United States has been involved in for the United States.
Sure. Even though the first language of Puerto Rico is Spanish.
That's correct.
Red-blooded Americans as well.
Right. We're a territory of the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the neighborhood and the tensions that were there.
Well, you know, we were coming into a new culture, and we were coming into a new community. And so the people that were living there felt threatened, felt afraid of us. They didn't know who we were. And a lot of those fears created a lot of discrimination also during that time. That has happened with other minorities coming into the city.
Talk about discrimination.
Well, I mean, you know, signs like "No dogs allowed." You go to look for an apartment, they tell you we don't rent to Puerto Ricans. You know, very clear, not very obvious that there was discrimination.
And it's usually in the history of the United States, it seems like whatever group is the most recent of the newcomers.
Right, they experienced that. But it you know, it has remained, in some groups it has remained, like for example African Americans and ourselves, it has remained even past, you know, for many years afterwards. So we're still experiencing those kind of things, not as blatant as it was at that time, but we're still experiencing that.
Sure. So you had to grow up kind of tough in Chicago to survive.
Exactly. I think everybody if you were not in some type of a gang, you were not a Chicagoan at the time, we said, because everybody, there was just a lot of segregation going on during that time. You know, like the Polish and the German, they had their own section, and the Irish, and we had our own section. So there was a segregated city, a segregated neighborhood, but at the same time a united neighborhood. Everybody felt they were from that area, that you know. So they pulled together, but at the same time we fought each other.
So just to be clear, there were white gangs as well, European American gangs.
Well, they were called clubs. We were called the gang. But
interesting.
But there definitely were groups there. We got, I mean, my father got beat up. You know, they were beating up adults. So it was sort of like what was going on in the South, except this was being done by urban gangs. So we couldn't call them a mob, they called them a gang. But it was really the same thing. It had to do with discrimination. So there was nothing like the gangs of today that are drug cartels and they're involved in an enterprise. We were just moving into a neighborhood and we kind of coalesced together for protection.
So yeah, number one purpose then was to stay together for your own safety.
For the safety, exactly.
Okay.
For security.
Okay. And so walk us through your teenage years. Those were some pretty rocky years for you.
Well, they were good and bad. You know, I mean, we helped build community. Our parents were like pilgrims, pioneers, the first Puerto Rican immigrants to Chicago. And so they built church organizations.
Now, your mom was active in the Catholic Church.
She was running catechism classes inside our own apartment, our own house, because she wanted the public school kids that could not afford to go to Catholic school. She wanted them to make their first communion. She had grown up in a Catholic orphanage, so she was very religious already, and she was part of that religious movement, the Caballeros de San Juan, which is like the Knights of Columbus,
okay,
and the Damas de Maria, the Daughters of Mary. So that was the groups that were in the community at the time, and she was very active in that and very active in teaching catechism classes from the home. They just wanted a Spanish Mass. That was their main mission. Where, you know, later on we wanted self-determination for the community. But so we learned a lot from them, from our parents, but we were also clashing with them because we were becoming more Americanized, and all they knew was Puerto Rico, and all we knew was the neighborhood where we were living at, you know, at the time. So there were some clashes.
So a generational clash. Really.
Generational clashes, yes.
Because
at
of
the time.
where you were living and what your experience was.
But generational clashes, but then we saw how they were being treated too, and then we felt more for them, and in fact that's what turned us around later, you know. So we left the gang to try to protect and to try to continue protecting the community, but in a different way. We organized the first large public demonstrations to protest urban renewal and the
I know this was
displacement of
after
white
you
people.
came out of prison.
This is after I came out of prison for substance abuse, you know, at the time. And I wanted to stop substance abuse, and so I was president of the street gang at that time, and I decided that what we needed was something a little radical like the Black Panthers, but in the Puerto Rican community. And so that was my goal, was to come out, and I was reading Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and started with Thomas Merton about a hermit priest, because at one time I wanted to be a priest, and I had been an altar boy also at St. Michael's. And so I came out with the intention of changing the gang, and it had never been done. It hasn't been done, but we did it, you know, in Chicago.
So would you say that prison time, quiet time, reading time was what allowed you to create this kind of shift in your own thinking and maybe get you more grounded so that you could take the young lords in a new direction?
I was in maximum security. They put me in there because I was in trouble in the prison. So they put me in maximum security, so I had a lot of quiet time, as you say. And I was able to do some reading and reflecting and wanting to change myself, you know, without the assistance of any social worker. I just, on my own, I wanted to do that. During that time is when Martin Luther King was killed, and so the rioters were coming into the jail. So I was seeing them face to face. Also, at that time, they do the yearly roundups of Mexican undocumented workers, and so they were bringing them into the jail, and I was translating for them. So that kind of, you know, I saw that they were just here for work. They weren't criminals, you know.
Right.
I guess we were little petty criminals, but they had not committed any crimes. So that affected me.
Sure.
Yeah, my education in that.
So when you came out of prison and you're starting to create community or a coalition around the Puerto Rican community, does that extend to other Latino communities as well? Was it a broad-based?
It was a broad-based coalition. It extended to other minorities in Lincoln Park because it was primarily the working people that were being displaced in that area. I like the word displaced is more clear than gentrification because it was a planned displacement of the people from the lakefront and the downtown area. Because
Gentrification sounds too noble.
it's too noble, exactly. And we need to be clear that this was a master plan by the city to evict the working people away from the lakefront and the downtown area because it was prime real estate and they wanted to raise taxes to pay for services.
Sure.
So they had they wanted, their intentions were good, but they didn't take into account the residents that live there. And I think that's the main problem there, that we plan neighborhoods, but we don't, and we talk about buildings, but we don't talk about the people that live in those neighborhoods.
And without the people, a city is just a collection of empty buildings.
Exactly, and so we're displacing not only people, but we're displacing the problem, and never really addressing the issues of gang violence and the issues of crime in the local neighborhoods. And until we do that, as long as we continue to be in denial, we'll never be able to really fix the problem or the problems that exist in the urban cities.
Sure. So as part of this coalition building, one of the things that always struck me about your work is that you created this working relationship with the African American community, which eventually led to the election of Harold Washington. Can you talk about that?
Exactly. We stood, for self-determination, so we didn't want them to tell us what to do or us to tell other communities what to do, but we were able to coalesce because we had the same common goals. We wanted to empower our peoples. And so we got together with the election. I became the Northside Hispanic precinct coordinator for the Harold Washington campaign. We were the Young Lords were the first to endorse him.
Okay.
And then we built that coalition that got him elected. But prior to that, I myself had run for alderman in the 46th Ward of Chicago, and I was the first Latino to announce and to run against the Daley Machine. And so Harold Washington came in with neighborhoods first. It was the same thing that we were talking about, so we automatically jumped on his campaign, and no one thought that he had a chance, and we proved that he, we were getting 70 to 80, 90% of the vote, for Harold Washington in our precincts. So we did an excellent job. We helped him get elected, and it was different than protesting. First we were protesting and picketing, and now we were victorious. We had won. So there was hope at that time for Chicago.
Well, you had a political focus and really an action plan.
Exactly. We were clear, that we were addressing the needs, the urban renewal and displacement, and that we had done in '69, because this was in 1983, so we were still addressing those needs.
Sure. So some of your materials are now being housed in the archives at Grand Valley State University. What do you hope people to learn as they experience these materials?
Well, I think that as we do urban planning, we need to focus on people, again, more than just buildings. And so if we can get that attention across, if we can get that information across, that's really all we want to do. We're for improvement, we're for development, but we need to neighborhood control development, but controlled by the people is what we believe in and what we're fighting for. So as long as we take into consideration the people that live there, the indigenous residents of that area, I think that we'll be making a good step forward, and we'll be getting to solve some of these issues in the urban areas.
Sure, because those problems aren't going away.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
So that's really what my intentions are with the oral history. We have over 120 oral histories of primary sources. The people that used to live in Lincoln Park are still there, so we recreated the neighborhood basically, and it's an ongoing project.
It's so important to capture those voices because as the years go on, we lose access to some of those people as they pass on.
Exactly, and then it's a good example of what's taking place in other communities, including here in Grand Rapids, where you have on the west side now there's a lot of development going on, and not enough attention to the residents that live there now. And so we need to look at how they're also beautiful. Besides the buildings, the people are also beautiful. We need to really focus on that.
So changing a neighborhood is more than just changing buildings. It's doing it in concert with the folks who live there.
Exactly.
That's a really great message to take away.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need to wrap up in just a moment, but let me ask you before we conclude, what's next for Chacha Jimenez?
Well, we want to continue with the project. There are some, right now as we speak, there's a play called Party People in Oakland, California. There's a movie called Millie and the Lords that's coming out. There's some books that are coming out. So we're trying to get the message across. It happened in Chicago, but it's not just a Chicago message. It's a message for the whole country. In terms of even for the new immigrants that are coming, we have to take a look at there's this. There are people have already, gang theorists talk about the fact that changing neighborhoods breed crime and gangs. And when you deal with development, you're changing the neighborhood. So if you do not take into consideration, again, the local residents and the youth of that community, our children, then we're not going to get anywhere, is what I'm saying. We need to really focus on the people, is my message, I guess. I'm repetitive, but that's the message.
Those are important words, wise words. Yeah, I want to thank you for coming by the studio today.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it.
And sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Really important stuff.
I appreciate it.
And for our viewers back home, stay tuned. We'll be coming back in just a moment with some tips on American English, American culture, and a little bit of American humor.
I'm not very mechanically minded. There are lots of tools and devices I don't know the names for. This thing, for example, or what do you call this thing? In English, there are technical words for items that the average person does not know the name of. This is because every area of life, from auto mechanics to medicine to architecture and barbering, have more details than we non-specialists can handle. In short, it takes an expert to identify and label these specialized items. When we don't know what to call something in English, we use a word that means it's a thing, but I don't know the name for it. In standard English, we might call something a gadget, a widget, or a device. If it's bigger, we might call it a contraption. But on the informal side, there are more interesting words that Americans use when they don't know what to call something. A gizmo, a thingamabob, a thingamajig, or a thingy. Some people say doohickey or doodad or doojigger. My favorite is whatchamacallit, which is a slurring together of the phrase, whatever you may call it. And then there's the related what's-is, from the question, what is this? If you can't remember all these funny words, we put them together on our webpage in the What's Up section. So the next time you're helping an American friend with a project, don't be shy about your limited vocabulary. Everything has a name for it. Now, would you like me to hand you this thingamabob? Or maybe this doohickey?
In grammar class, the teacher asked a student a question. Carlos, can you name 2 pronouns? Carlos, who suddenly woke up, said, "Who, me?